The child they called Ralilila came into the world on July 18, 1918, in a small village called Mizo, tucked into the hills of South Africa's Eastern Cape. His name, given by his father, meant troublemaker. It would prove prophetic, though not in the way anyone could have imagined. Years later, a teacher would give him another name, Nelson, because in those days, African children were given English names to fit into a world that didn't yet belong to them. He was born into royalty, the son of a chief, but he grew up like the other village children, herding cattle, playing games in the dust, listening to elders tell stories under the stars. His father, Gadla Henry Mandela, taught him something he never forgot. A leader, he said, is like a shepherd. He stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go on ahead, whereupon the others follow, not realizing that all along they are being directed from behind. Young Nelson didn't fully understand it then, but the image stayed with him. When his father died, Nelson was only 9. He was taken in by the regent of the Thembu people, a man who raised him alongside his own children, giving him an education and a view of the world beyond the village. He listened to the great chiefs gather, watched them debate, learned how power worked. But he also began to notice something else. The laws that governed his people came not from their own leaders, but from a distant government that didn't look like them, didn't speak like them, didn't value them. The seeds of awareness were being planted. He ran away from an arranged marriage, seeking something he couldn't yet name. He ended up in Johannesburg, a city of gold and greed, of soaring buildings and deep division. What he saw there opened his eyes. Black men with education working as messengers. Women scrubbing floors in houses they couldn't enter through the front door. Families torn apart by laws that decided where you could live, who you could love, what work you could do. The system had a name, apartheid, though in those early years, it was still hardening into the brutal machinery it would become. He enrolled at the University of Witwatersrand, the only black law student in a sea of white faces. He felt the isolation, the stares, the small dismissals. But he also found something else, people who believed in equality, who dreamed of a different South Africa. He joined the African National Congress in 1944, a young man among veterans, bringing new energy to an organization that had grown cautious. With Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu, he formed the ANC Youth League, pushing for action, for protest, for the kind of change that wouldn't wait politely. He married Evelyn Mays, a quiet nurse from the countryside, and they built a life together even as his activism consumed more of his time. She wanted a husband who came home. He wanted a country that belonged to everyone. The tension between those two desires would haunt him for decades. The 1950s were years of resistance. Mandela organized boycotts, strikes, campaigns of civil disobedience. He traveled the country, speaking in dusty halls and crowded churches, his voice growing stronger, his vision sharper. He was arrested again and again, charged with treason, tried and acquitted, only to return to the fight. In 1952, he and Oliver Tambo opened the first black law firm in South Africa. Black clients walked through their doors and saw something they'd never seen before. Lawyers who looked like them, who understood their pain, who fought for them without condescension. But the government grew more brutal. In 1960, police opened fire on a crowd of peaceful protesters in Sharpeville, killing 69 people. Many were shot in the back as they ran. Mandela watched his country cross a line, and he crossed one too. Nonviolence had been his creed, but Sharpeville forced a reckoning. If the government answered peaceful protest with massacre, how could you keep asking your people to turn the other cheek? He helped form Umkhonto we Sizwe, the armed wing of the ANC. Their target wasn't people, but property, power stations, government buildings, the infrastructure of oppression. They wanted to show that the cost of apartheid was too high. Mandela trained abroad, returned secretly, lived as a ghost in his own country, moving from safe house to safe house, always one step ahead. In 1962, his luck ran out. He was arrested, charged with sabotage and conspiracy, and at the Rivonia trial, he faced the possibility of death. From the dock, he gave a speech that would echo through history. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But, if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. He was sentenced to life in prison. For 18 years, he was held on Robben Island, in a cell so small he could stretch out his arms and touch both walls. He broke rocks in the quarry, the sun reflecting off the white stone damaging his eyes permanently. He was allowed one visitor a year, one letter every 6 months. But he never stopped learning. He studied law, taught other prisoners, read the news smuggled in by sympathetic guards. He watched his children grow up in photographs, his marriage dissolve, the world outside change in ways he couldn't touch. And yet, from that tiny cell, he grew larger. The apartheid government tried to bury him, but they only made him a symbol. Free Nelson Mandela became a cry heard around the world. Concerts were held. Sanctions were imposed. Students in London, workers in Detroit, activists in Delhi all chanted his name. He became the prisoner who belonged to everyone. In 1990, the government finally understood that apartheid couldn't survive. The new president, F.W. de Klerk, ordered his release. On February 11th, Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison, hand in hand with his wife Winnie, fist raised to the crowds. He was 71 years old. He had spent 27 years behind bars. And he emerged not with bitterness, but with a message that shocked the world: forgiveness. He could have called for revenge. He could have demanded justice through fire. Instead, he preached reconciliation. He met with the very people who had imprisoned him. He wore the jersey of the Springboks, the rugby team that had once been a symbol of white supremacy, and watched black and white South Africans cheer together. He understood that if the country was to survive, it couldn't be built on the ashes of its past. It had to be built on something stronger: the willingness to let go. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections. Mandela voted for the first time in his life, then watched as his people stood in lines that stretched for miles, waiting hours to mark their ballots. He became president, not of a black South Africa or a white South Africa, but of one South Africa, belonging to all who lived in it. He served one term, then stepped away. He could have stayed, could have been president for life. But he believed in institutions, not individuals. He believed that leaders must know when to follow. The years that followed were quieter, though never still. He fought AIDS, built schools, raised money for children. He held the world's attention not through power, but through presence. When he died on December 5, 2013, at the age of 95, the world mourned not just a man, but a possibility, the possibility that one person, through patience and principle, could bend the arc of history toward justice. They buried him in his childhood village, among the hills where he once herded cattle. The shepherd had come home, and the flock he led, all of us, still follow.